So what I want to present, I think, could be very critical information for the rest of our lives and for the lives of other people, now and in the future, who stumble or gravitate into this process and find themselves having to grapple with challenges that none of their previous training really prepared them for. So, there is a term or a phrase that I came up with a few years ago that I want to use as the kind of basis for the discussion tonight. And I'll tell you a little story about it as I go. It's not a nice, simplistic little ditty. It's kind of complex. You'll see that there's at least one word in it that people will chronically stumble over. But the acronym, is this going to work? Is that light dark enough to see? Or?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So the acronym for it is pretty memorable. R-O-S-E. Rose. And rest on blue. Radical. Organismic. That's the one that people stumble on. Somewhere I use that word. What was it with our in-laws or somebody?
Yes, it's Louise.
Louise.
She says, orgasmic, count me in.
That's the matriarch of our extended family in California. Linda's got a brother there, and we've got a whole family that is very dear to us. Radical, organismic, it's also not organic. Sentient, emergence. Now, some of you may have seen this before with one or another of these letters meaning something else, and I'll talk about that a little bit. And this last one I just came through recently. Originally, sentient was spiritual and emergence was evolution. But I like these better. So, I'll say a few things about this, and then I'll say a bunch more stuff explaining and hopefully making sense of why it's relevant to what I just opened up with. And then hopefully we can talk and have some conversation. The first thing I want to say about this phrase, radical, organismic, sentient emergence, or emergent, if it's used as an adjective, is that it's actually, in my view, it pertains to our kind of transformational process. So even though Linda and I use it in our own work, and it's not come into the waking down and mutuality field, from my point of view, waking down and mutuality is a very, very fine expression of this kind of process. Linda and I have come up with a couple of others. The Tantra of Trust is another one, and what we call the Force of Destiny. The Tantra of Trust is a relationship-oriented teaching. The Force of Destiny is a life purpose-oriented teaching. Waking Down in Mutuality includes those elements, but it's fundamentally a teaching about developing a new awareness and basic sense of quality of participation in life. It's about awakening and beyond. And there could be any number of other unique expressions that could have quite distinctive language that can emerge or come forth that will prove over time, I think this will happen, will prove to have these qualities. And in that sense, to be unlike so much of what has come before. Another term we can use here to talk about all this is to say that it's post-hypermasculine. But talk about a word not to use to try to advertise your teaching. So let me get into it, and one by one, and take it from there. Radical. Radical means coming from the root, or roots, springing from the source. And in this case, it's been my consistent observation of how the process gets lived, that even if people living it don't know a whole lot of the, what you might call esoteric physiology or esoteric anatomy of it that matters tremendously to me, they nonetheless are imbued with its disposition. They're living, many of you, clearly are living a radical process. You're founded in, or getting founded in, that which is source and essential to your whole existence. And that source is not anywhere outside your body. It's not even merely deep within somewhere, but it is definitely at the center of existence. And it's at the center of bodily existence as well as spiritual existence. It is the heart. And I'm not going to go into a long exposition tonight about how that comes to be so in this work, but I will say a few things about it. And I know many of you have heard things along these lines from me before, but it's crucial to say it here. The essence of the lineage of transmission that has made this work possible has come through two great adepts who emerged mostly in the 20th century. The first actually had his great awakening in 1896, Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi of India, who basically came alive and awake as a great sage spontaneously at the age of 17 through a harrowing passage into the recognition that he was dying. Some people later said about it that he felt the fear of death, but whenever he heard that, he said, no, I didn't feel the fear of death. I was dying, even though he was a healthy 17-year-old. And that drove him to inquire of his nature and find that element of his nature that might transcend the dying. And he realized that element directly and never lost the realization. And for the rest of his life, frequently said, to the consternation of yogis who were seeking to get up and out to the great glory of the divine light above body, mind, and world, he would say, no, it's here in the heart. And others would say to him, how can you say it's associated with the body when it is that which is all-pervading and transcendental and far beyond the body? And sometimes he would say, well, this is just what needs to be said to those who are still attached to the body. But nonetheless, he was very emphatic about it. And he was crucial in the beginning of my awakening process, but he was no longer alive, and he was a classical ancient Indian in his disposition. He literally wore a loincloth and refused to be involved in any kinds of conventional relationship. And I was a young American in the 70s trying to figure out how to live. And I began to realize I needed a living teacher, and that was what led me. I had to find another realizer of the heart, capital H, led me to The final name that he used was Avatar Adida Samraj.